Hi guys, in this video we're going to be talking about 20 Battlefield 6 tips I wish I knew sooner, which are going to help out with things like XP gains, some of the hidden passives in the game that the game doesn't tell you about. We're going to make sure that you've got all the basics locked in so that you're helping your team properly and you're never losing ever again, and also one or two only in Battlefield style tips that are going to be really fun for you to try out in your games. So if you're a fan of these sorts of videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that I know to make more of these in the future, and without further ado, let's begin. First, are you constantly running out of ammo as an assault player? Because I know when I started playing, I'd be asking my support players for restocks all the time, and I still just never had enough ammo. And it turns out that the third weapon that the assault class has, which can be a shotgun, a carbine, or a DMR, that actually is causing the problem. You see, if you're using a third weapon, it's going to halve the ammo of your normal gun. So what you're going to want to do is swap your third weapon to a gadget, and you'll then see your primary weapon's ammo reserves go up dramatically. Now, speaking of stingy support players who refuse to fulfill their role and give you the ammo that you need, and no, this isn't even the tip itself that I'm about to give you. This is just a comment coming from my heart and soul. Please, if you're a support player, drop your supply bag. It increases equipment recharge rates on top of ammo and heals. Just drop the thing down. But now that's off my chest. The tip is that you can resupply and heal without a supply bag being dropped down, just by interacting with a support player. Like, this is an entirely passive thing. You just go up to the player and interact with them. But the unfortunate caveat is I think this only works if the support player is in your squad. Next, one of the most crucial things you can do for your team is to spot and ping every enemy player, right? And you do this on PC by pressing Q while aiming at players, and then your entire team will be able to see a little marker above that enemy's head, and that will also mark them on the minimap. Now, another great way to mark enemies is with Recon's drone, and you can use this whenever you can, especially in modes with high enemy density like Breakthrough. And Recon players also have a passive that spots hostiles automatically just by aiming at them. But crucially, an enemy is not marked for the entire team if the marker above their head is a hollowed out marker. It must be a solid one, so like fully filled in, for your team to see them properly marked. The reason there's a difference between the two here is there is some mini player spotting, so the game will automatically spot people in front of you sometimes, even if you're not on the Recon class, but it will be one of those hollow markers, and that's just for you. And it's when you manually activate the spot button, and I think that on console you might actually have to double press your left bumper in order to make this happen rather than just single pressing it, but it's doing that kind of active spotting command, which is then going to turn it into a solid marker. Next, when you spot enemies, if you can't see them on the minimap, what's the point? Right? But a lot of people play with minimap settings that just suck. So go to graphics and then go to your advanced HUD settings just here, and then scroll to minimap. And if you're having any trouble seeing those pings on the map, change your size to large. Then change view distance on foot to 250 and 300 for ground vehicles and air. And then additionally, you can go to graphics, icons and indicators, edit HUD icons, and change your icon opacity while zoomed to 50% or any number of your choice. And this will then drastically decrease the clutter that you see while aiming. And because you won't be changing your enemy icon opacity, like you'll want to leave that at 100%, it'll mean that you can just focus on the important information to you. Next, if you're a newer player to Battlefield 6 and you also want to earn some XP while you kind of learn the ropes, Taken R6 from my Twitter has a recommendation for you. There's a game mode where you earn XP in the training grounds called Initiation Breakthrough. And the matches have a very small number of real players, but mostly are filled with bots to get you started. And the nice thing is you still gain just as much XP from this mode as the others in the game. So there's no harm in jumping in there to earn some XP and also learn how everything works. Now, while I'm sharing this from Taken, if you want your tip featured in my next tip video, leave a comment and I'll feature you guys that drop the best info down in the comment section. Next, each class gains a bonus when using their special weapon type. We already know this, they have signature weapons, but there's a detail here that the game doesn't tell you. So for Assault, they gain better handling with assault rifles. Engineers have improved SMG hipfire, support can run normal speed with the LMGs, and they can ADS faster. And then it's recon, where things get a little spicy. So they have reduced sniper weapon sway, as you probably know, and they have better breath control and quicker rechambering between shots. But there's another bonus for snipers, which the game doesn't really explain, and I honestly feel like they should change this in a patch because it's kind of crazy OP. So we know the game has open loadouts, right? Like it's got unlocked loadouts, so you can use any weapon on any class. And so that might mean that you're tempted to say, okay, well, I'll use a sniper on a non-recon class just because I want to have a sniper equipped. But the problem is you should never, ever do this, because players have found that if you're using a sniper on a non-recon class, you have a percentage chance to just completely miss the bullet. Like, even if you're aiming on target, sometimes the target just doesn't receive damage. Like, your bullet just goes somewhere else. Whereas if you're on recon, your bullet will always hit. So it's not just a weapon sway thing or a breath control thing, but recon also is the only class that can shoot in a straight line with a sniper rifle 100% of the time. Now, speaking of accuracy, Battlefield 6 is a challenge if you want to shoot enemies at range with automatic rifles, just because there's so much bloom. And if you don't know what that is, it means that when you hold the trigger down, your bullets start going everywhere. But to counter this, you can obviously just fire in bursts at long range, that's fine, but alternatively, you can just hit your B key on PC, and that will change your fire mode from full auto to single fire, and your gun will then become an absolute laser compared to what it would be full auto. Next, tickets are obviously the main currency of winning a game, because if you run out of tickets, then you lose. Each player respawn will consume tickets, so it might be worth waiting a little longer to see if there's a medic around to revive you, because your respawn is going to cost a hell of a lot of tokens for your team. Now, as a very quick bonus tip here, you might think, oh, well, if I'm not a medic, I just should never revive people. It's never a good idea. But any class, not just medics, can drag their squad mates away and get the revive while doing that. So it's no excuse if your squad mate is down, specifically not just a general teammate, but a squad mate, you should at least consider the idea that you could drag them to cover to res them. Next, while we're talking about winning games and game modes and objectives and things like that, in modes like Breakthrough and Rush, when there's dense groups of enemies, you might find that it's really difficult to push through enemy lines. And this is where your humble kit comes in. One of my favorite items to use in these scenarios is the smoke grenade. Just toss some out as cover while you and your team push forwards, and that will completely revolutionize the way that you storm the battlefield. But crucially, the only class that can equip smokes is support. So that's just yet another reason to be kind to your medic friends. Now, continuing on from this with our next tip, to sustain the ground that you gain from running through with those smoke grenades, redeploy beacons are really useful to keep up your momentum. Now, previously, these were equipable for the recon class, but now they're a gadget for assault. And to unlock it, you must complete assault assignment level 1, which you can find in your challenges tab in the menu just here. It is going to require you to level up to access this. You need to be level 20, and you then need to gain score as assault and get 30 kills while under the effects of the adrenaline shot, and then you'll have access to it and you'll be able to place those beacons down. Next, gaining XP in Battlefield 6 sometimes can feel pretty brutal. In fact, 99% of the time it feels that way, but there are a couple of things you can do about it, right? Number one, you might not realize this, you do actually get a bonus of XP from winning matches, right? So if it's neck and neck, you should actually be tryharding and playing the damn objective, because you've got some XP on the line there. Also, don't ever leave a match early. You get a huge amount of XP that scales with how long you spent in a match once it's over. So you realistically should always be trying to make it to the end of a match rather than just rage quitting, unless you're having an absolutely terrible time, I suppose. Now, on top of all that, you are rewarded with more XP if you have friends in your party. You'll get plus 5% if you're partied up with even just one other person, and you'll get plus 10% if you're partied with a group of 3 or 4. So always try and make sure you load in with a full squad if you want to maximize your XP gains. and you're probably more likely to win your match by doing that as well, unless your friends have no thumbs. Finally, on top of that, the score that appears on your screen is the XP you're gaining, generally at least, as well. So capturing objectives, getting kills on objectives, healing or reviving your team, repairing vehicles, spotting enemies, all of those add up for XP gains. Next, you can equip double XP boosters in the game if you're not already aware by going to this screen here and clicking XP boosts. But be careful because once you activate them, the timer starts running down even if you're just sitting in the menu. So wait until you're in the game to activate them by opening the pause menu and clicking the XP boost from here instead. Next, I see players running from spawn all the time with their weapons out, and you might as well avoid this, right? If you hold your melee button, you'll pull your knife out, and you'll run much faster than you do with your gun out. Now, if you're an engineer who likes to cause problems with the sledgehammer, then equipping it trades the mobility of the knife slot for the ability to break through things. But to get around this issue, whip out your repair tool and you'll be able to run just as fast as if you were carrying a knife. Now, beyond this, word on the street says you run even faster as support with defibs out. I've not tested this myself, but I believe this may be the case. There's no downside to running with them out in your spawn anyway, and you can also get kills with a charged defib as well, so it's a pretty deadly weapon to be running around with after all. Next, let's address the elephant in the room. COD players. No, I'm kidding. Aerial vehicles. So, transparently, I suck at flying helis and jets. I've got a lot to learn, but I've been practicing my flying via community-created training grounds. If you navigate to your community tab and hit the search experiences button and then type in and search the code 8v8g, you can then click on the mode and browse active servers or host one of your own, or you can obviously give some other different training modes a spin as well. If any especially good ones pop up, I'll post them in the description. But for now, also, I really recommend the video from Tactical Brit, which talks about flying, which I'll also link in the description down below, which has a lot of extensive information for you guys to become better pilots. Now, while we're on the topic of flying, what's the use in practicing all that if your controls suck, right? So a quick fix for flight controls for both controller and keyboard, I recommend on controller changing the aircraft and helicopter buttons from default to alternate. And for keyboard, I recommend changing the binding for pitch down to spacebar and pitch up to left control in both aircraft pilot and helicopter pilot keybinds. This will take a little getting used to, but it will give you a lot more control of your vehicle, so I highly recommend it. Next, have you ever been shooting behind cover, but your bullets keep just hitting the cover in front of you instead of going to your target? This is caused by the fact that in shooters like Counter-Strike, for example, bullets are actually fired from your eyeballs, technically, which allows you to shoot someone even if only your head is showing. But in Battlefield 6, that's not the case. Bullets are fired from the barrel of your gun, which makes maybe a bit more sense. And this means your gun needs room to shoot over the cover. So if you're aiming down sight, you might not know where your gun barrel is, and therefore it's important to use the right optics to avoid this issue as much as possible. And so you can use this as a way to distinguish between which optics you like and which you don't like, because you might find that there are two optics available at the same zoom level, but one might lead to you running into issues based solely on how high the optic sits above your gun, because you'll just be used to firing from the optic instead of firing from the barrel. So when you choose your optic, if this is something that you've experienced, choose one that sits lower on the gun, and then you're less likely to have this problem in future. Shout out to Drop Hazard for this tip. Next, while we're talking about loadouts, there's a really strange thing going on. So on the bottom right, there are stats that show hipfire, precision, control, and mobility stats. Hipfire and mobility are fairly obvious, right? Accuracy when firing from the hip, and how fast and smooth you move. But what exactly is precision, right? Turns out this is your weapon spread and bloom, so the higher the precision, the more you can spray at long range. And control is the recoil. So don't get those mixed up. If you've got a high control stat, it's going to mean that the kick and feedback you get while firing is reduced. Next, playing engineer can be a selfless task sometimes. You know, only the bravest of soldiers commit to it, or sometimes it's those guys that are vehicle hogging and sitting on the edge of the map with a tank and doing nothing for the team. But regardless, whether that's you or whether you are the bravest of brave soldiers, you need to know this tip. So engineers have a secret ability where they prevent hostiles from occupying your vehicle, even if your vehicle is empty. This is just part of the engineer class, and it's repairing the vehicle that resets the timer on this passive ability and prevents other people from being able to yoink it. But alongside all that, engineers also have some extra benefits for their destructive abilities too. So when taking down tanks, you often have to use all your explosive ammo, right? Otherwise, the tank just won't die. And even then, sometimes you run out of explosives and the tank is still firing. But did you know, first of all, tanks take extra damage from the back, so make sure to be hitting it from the back if you want to take it down. And also, engineers are going to take less explosive damage from your teammates' tanks and things like that blowing up. So if you need to be in a scenario where you have a little hero moment, you run through an explosion to hit it from the back, then make sure you're on engineer when you're trying to do that. Next, this is a certified only in Battlefield style tip. It comes from USG Kellyan. I love this. So C4 is available for recon players, right? But you do have to get to level 20 first, and then you have to get your 10,000 score as recon and spot 250 enemies with gadgets. The fastest way to do this is by pulling out the drone in Breakthrough, as enemy density is pretty high at all times, and you'll just spot a ton of enemies very quickly. Once that's done, whip out your drone, okay, then exit it immediately, throw your C4 onto the drone, and then re-enter the drone and fly it into the nearest tank. This is an Amazon same-day delivery waiting to happen, and what you're delivering is death and explosions and dead tanks and dead enemy players and a lot of fun for you. This is really satisfying. So big ups to USG Kellyan for that tip, like I said. Now guys, this was just the beginning of my Battlefield tips lists. I've got a whole nother tips video on screen right now with some even more pro and expert tips. So get your ass over there, all right? Click through to that video. I will see you in that next tips video. And also, before you go, make sure you leave some comments with your Battlefield tips to get featured in a future video. I'll see you soon.